My name is Victoria Ashford, and for 12 years, I lived as the invisible wife of a very visible man. I'm 42 years old, a graduate of Northwestern University, with a degree in economics that I never got to use because my husband convinced me that supporting his career was more important than having one of my own. I grew up in Chicago, the daughter of a middle-class accountant who taught me that numbers never lie, even when people do. My grandmother, who raised me after my mother passed away when I was 10, left me one final gift before she died, $2 million and a note that said, "Victoria, don't let anyone make you small. You have the gift. Use it." For 12 years I ignored that note. I made myself small. I made myself decorative. I made myself exactly what my husband Marcus Ashford needed me to be, the perfect accessory to his carefully constructed image of success. Tonight, at the Windsor Club's annual Harrison Foundation Gala, that was all about to change. The champagne flute felt cold against my palm as I stood near the marble pillar, watching my husband prepare to give his speech. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, and the kind of wealth that whispered rather than shouted. 200 of Los Angeles's elite had gathered, and Marcus, my husband of 12 years, was being honored as Philanthropist of the Year. I adjusted the Valentino gown he'd selected for me that morning. Emerald silk, chosen not for how it made me feel, but for how it made him look. A successful man with a beautiful wife. That's what I was supposed to be. That's what I'd been for 12 years. But what Marcus didn't know, what none of these people knew, was that the woman standing in this emerald dress had spent the last 3 years building something in secret. While he thought I was attending yoga classes and charity luncheons, I was meeting with financial advisors and investment brokers. While he assumed I spent my days shopping and getting my nails done, I was studying market trends and real estate opportunities. While he believed I was completely dependent on him, I had turned my grandmother's $2 million inheritance into $6.2 million in carefully diversified investments. I had become exactly what my grandmother hoped I would be. I just hadn't told anyone yet. Before we continue, thank you for joining my journey tonight. If you believe that no one should ever be diminished for someone else's ego, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps share stories of empowerment like this one. Now, let's dive deeper. Marcus took the stage with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. His Tom Ford tuxedo fit perfectly because I'd taken it to 3 different tailors until it was flawless. His speech cards were organized because I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. helping him rehearse. The donation he was being honored for, $500,000 to children's education, came from the trust fund his grandfather had left him, a fund I'd helped him manage for over a decade. "Thank you all for this incredible honor," Marcus began, his voice carrying that practiced tone of humility that wealthy men perfect. "I've been blessed in so many ways, and I believe it's our duty to give back." The applause was polite, rehearsed. These people knew the game. Donate publicly, get honored, improve your social standing, attract better business connections. It was a transaction dressed up as altruism. "Of course," Marcus continued, and something in his tone shifted. His eyes found his inner circle, table 3 where his golf buddies sat with their wives. "I couldn't have done any of this without the support of my lovely wife, Victoria." Here it comes, I thought. The obligatory acknowledgement. The pat on the head for the good little wife who stayed home while he built his empire. "Victoria has been my rock," he said, and William Chandler at table 3 snickered into his champagne. "She's mastered the art of looking beautiful at events like these. It's a talent, really, being decorative." The ballroom's laughter started as a ripple, uncertain at first. Was this a joke? Was he being affectionate? "I mean it." Marcus doubled down, warming to his theme now. His smile grew wider as he fed off the crowd's reaction. "Victoria is proof that not everyone needs to contribute meaningfully to society. Sometimes it's enough to just show up and look pretty." The laughter grew louder, more confident. Permission had been granted to mock. My fingers tightened around the champagne flute until I was surprised it didn't shatter. Around me, I could feel the eyes, the pitying glances from wives who were grateful it wasn't them. The smug satisfaction from the men who'd always seen me as nothing more than Marcus's accessory. "Honestly, sweetheart," Marcus looked directly at me now, his eyes glittering with something cruel I'd never seen aimed at me before. "Could you even survive a week without my credit card?" I think we both know the answer. The room erupted. 200 people laughing at me, at my worthlessness, at how completely I was dependent on the man standing on that stage, bathing in the spotlight I'd helped him reach. William stood up at his table, raising his glass. To Marcus, for keeping it real. To honesty in marriage, someone else shouted. I watched my husband accept their praise, saw him puff up with pride as his friends validated this public humiliation of his wife. This was fun for him. This was entertainment. Jennifer Morrison, sitting 2 tables away, wouldn't meet my eyes. We'd had coffee just last week, talking about starting a book club. Now she stared at her plate, embarrassed for me, grateful it wasn't her standing in my shoes. The speech continued. Marcus moved on to talking about his business ventures, his vision for the future, his plans for the foundation, but I couldn't hear the words anymore. All I could hear was that laughter, echoing through the ballroom's perfect acoustics, bouncing off the imported Italian marble, reverberating through every corner of my humiliation. What none of them knew was that I hadn't used Marcus's credit card in 3 years, that the Range Rover I drove was titled and paid for in my name alone, that the yoga classes were actually meetings with my private financial team, that the emerald dress I was wearing tonight had been purchased with dividends from my stock portfolio. Marcus thought he was mocking a helpless dependent. He had no idea he was humiliating a woman who could buy and sell him 3 times over. I set down my champagne flute and walked toward the stage. My heels clicked against the marble with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. People noticed me moving, conversations stuttering as I passed. Was she leaving? Was she going to cry in the bathroom? Poor thing. I climbed the 3 steps to the stage. The microphone stood abandoned where Marcus had left it. I picked it up, the feedback whine cutting through the dinner conversation like a knife. Excuse me, I said, my voice steady and clear. The ballroom fell silent. I'd like to say a few words. Marcus's head whipped around. His expression shifted from confusion to irritation to something like panic in the span of 3 seconds. He started moving toward the stage, but William grabbed his arm, probably thinking I was about to embarrass myself further. You're absolutely right, Marcus, I said into the microphone, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. I really can't survive another week in this marriage. The silence became absolute. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. So I won't. I smiled at him, the same smile I'd worn through 12 years of being made small. Consider yourself served. My attorneys will contact yours tomorrow morning. I'm filing for divorce. The gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Marcus's face went from tan to pale in an instant. And Marcus, I continued, maintaining eye contact with the man I'd spent 12 years supporting. That crack about your credit card? I haven't used it in 3 years. I've been funding my own life, my own investments, my own future, a future that, as of tonight, no longer includes you. I set the microphone down with a soft thud that somehow sounded louder than any shout could have been. Then I walked off the stage, down the center aisle of the ballroom, past 200 stunned faces, past the photographers who'd forgotten they were supposed to be taking pictures, past the life I was leaving behind. The valet brought my car around, not the Mercedes Marcus had bought me to match his, my car. The Range Rover I'd purchased 6 months ago with my own money, titled in my name alone, paid in full. I'd been preparing for this moment longer than I'd realized. Some part of me had known this was coming, had been building an escape route one investment at a time. I drove away from the Windsor Club with my hands steady on the wheel and my heart pounding in my chest. In my rearview mirror, I could see people spilling out onto the front steps, phones out, probably already texting everyone they knew. By morning, this would be the only story anyone in our social circle would be talking about. Let them talk. I was done being quiet. My phone started ringing before I'd even made it out of the parking lot. Marcus. I declined the call. He called again immediately. Declined. A text appeared. Victoria, what the hell are you doing? Get back here. We need to talk about this privately. Privately. Now he wanted privacy. After humiliating me in front of everyone we knew. I pulled over 3 blocks away, hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. What had I just done? 12 years of marriage ended in 60 seconds. No discussion, no warning, just done. My phone rang again. Not Marcus this time. Diane Chen, my financial advisor, the one Marcus didn't know about. I'm watching the live stream, she said without preamble. Someone's already uploaded it to Instagram. Victoria, are you okay? I'm free, I said, and started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, real laughter, the kind I hadn't felt in years. Diane, I'm actually free. Good. Her voice was warm, proud. Because we have work to do. Your portfolio is currently valued at $6.2 million. I think it's time we talked about your next move. $6.2 million. In 3 years, I'd turned $2 million into $6.2 million by trusting my instincts, by learning everything I could, by being willing to take calculated risks, while Marcus was busy telling people I couldn't survive without him. Let's meet tomorrow, I said. Early. I want to move fast on this. How fast? I thought about Marcus's face when I'd announced the divorce. His shock, his panic, the way his carefully constructed world had crumbled in 60 seconds. Devastatingly fast, I replied. I drove to the Peninsula Hotel, where I'd reserved a suite 3 weeks ago. Marcus didn't know about this either. I'd been planning this exit strategy since the day I'd overheard him on the phone with William, laughing about how his trophy wife was getting a little old to be a trophy, how maybe it was time to trade up. That conversation had planted a seed. Tonight, it had bloomed into revolution. The suite was exactly as I'd requested. Laptop waiting. Files organized. Every document I'd need for tomorrow's meeting with my divorce attorney already prepared. I'd been thorough, meticulous. While Marcus thought I was planning charity luncheons, I'd been planning my exit. I changed out of the Valentino gown and into comfortable clothes. My clothes bought with my money, chosen for no one but myself. Then I sat down at the laptop and opened my investment dashboard. The numbers glowed in the darkness. Real estate holdings in 3 states. Stock portfolios diversified across 12 sectors. Private equity investments in 7 startups, 3 of which were about to go public. Art collection valued at $1.3 million. And liquid assets that Marcus couldn't touch, because he'd never known they existed. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. I'm sorry. It was a joke. A stupid joke. Please come home. We can fix this. A joke. 12 years of our marriage reduced to a punchline, and now that there were consequences, it was just a joke. I blocked his number. Another text came through. My attorney, Robert Hendricks. Saw the video. Impressive exit. Ready to proceed at 8 a.m. sharp. We'll destroy him legally. Not destroy, I thought. Destroying him would mean I still cared enough to want to hurt him. What I wanted was simpler and more complete. I wanted to erase him from my life as thoroughly as if he'd never existed. The social media notifications were exploding now. Friends, acquaintances, people I barely knew all reaching out. Some offering support, others fishing for gossip. A few, I noticed, were wives of Marcus's friends, women who'd laughed along with the joke tonight but were now sending private messages. You're so brave. I wish I had your courage. How did you do it? How did I do it? I'd done it by being underestimated, by being dismissed as decorative while I educated myself, by being invisible while I built an empire. Tomorrow would be interesting. The divorce papers were filed at 8 a.m. sharp, exactly as promised. Robert Hendricks had assembled a team of 3 attorneys, all women, all brilliant, all hungry to take down a man who'd publicly humiliated his wife. This is going to be satisfying, Robert said, spreading documents across her conference table. We have documentation of every asset you've independently acquired. Every investment made with your inheritance. Your grandmother was wise to make that money untouchable by him. What about the house? I asked. The Beverly Hills mansion Marcus was so proud of. You've been paying half the mortgage from your personal accounts for 5 years. Robert pointed to bank statements. He thought his business account was covering it, but you diverted those payments and covered them yourself when his company had cash flow problems. You own half that house, Victoria. He just doesn't know it yet. I smiled. I'd forgotten about that. In year 7 of our marriage, Marcus's real estate development company had hit rough waters. Rather than tell him, rather than wound his pride, I'd quietly taken over our personal expenses, including half the mortgage. He'd never noticed, because I'd been too decorative to possibly understand finances. There's more, Robert continued. The Mercedes he drives? Titled in your name because his credit was maxed out when he bought it. The country club membership? You've been paying that for 3 years. Even the boat he loves? Your money financed 60% of it. How do you know all this? I'd hired Robert 3 weeks ago, but this level of detail was impressive. You kept immaculate records, she said simply. When you first contacted me, you sent me 7 years of documentation. Bank statements, receipts, investment records, everything. You've been preparing for this longer than you probably realized. She was right. Some part of me had been documenting everything, keeping evidence, building a case even before I'd consciously decided to leave. My subconscious had been smarter than my conscious mind, apparently. "What's our strategy?" I asked. "California is a community property state," Robert explained. "Normally, everything acquired during marriage is split 50-50, but your inheritance is separate property. Your investments from that inheritance are separate property. The only things subject to division are the assets he brought to the marriage or that were purchased with community funds." "Which amounts to what?" Robert's smile was sharp. "Not much. His development company is leveraged to the hilt. The house is half yours anyway. Most of the luxury items are titled in your name. Victoria, you're not just going to survive this divorce, you're going to thrive, while he's going to discover that his lifestyle was built on your foundation." My phone buzzed. Another call from Marcus. He'd figured out I'd blocked his main number and was calling from his office line. I declined it. "He's been calling all morning," Robert noted. 53 attempts across various numbers. "Let him call," I said. "I have nothing to say to him." "Good. Don't engage. Any communication needs to go through us. The more he panics, the more mistakes he'll make." A text came through on my business phone, the one Marcus didn't know about. "Diane Chen. Just got approached by a seller. Remember that property in Silver Lake you were watching? Owner wants out fast. 20% below market. Move today or lose it." "I need to make a call," I told Robert. "Business. You really have been building something, haven't you?" Robert looked impressed. "I've been building everything," I replied. The property in Silver Lake was a commercial building in a neighborhood about to explode. 3 tech companies had just signed leases in the area. A Whole Foods was breaking ground 2 blocks away. In 18 months, this building would be worth double what I'd pay today. "Buy it," I told Diane. "Full cash offer, close in 2 weeks. "That's aggressive." "I'm feeling aggressive." By noon, I owned another property. By 3 p.m., I'd met with 2 of my startup investments who wanted to discuss their upcoming IPO. By 6 p.m., I'd been interviewed by 3 different divorce attorneys who wanted to understand how I'd built such a comprehensive financial independence strategy. "You should teach a class," one of them said. "So many women come to me with nothing because they trusted their husbands to handle everything." "Maybe I will," I replied. "After this is done." Marcus called 37 more times that day. His mother called. His father called. His assistant called. His best friend William called, which was interesting. The man who'd stood and toasted my humiliation now wanted to talk. I answered that one. "Victoria," William's voice was cautious. "I think we need to discuss what happened." "Do we?" "Look, Marcus went too far. We all know that. But divorce? That's extreme. Maybe you could go to counseling or something." "William," I said sweetly, "did you enjoy the joke? When Marcus said I was decorative and useless, did you find that funny?" Silence. "You toasted it," I continued. "You stood up and celebrated my husband humiliating me. So no, William, we don't need to discuss anything. You and Marcus and all your friends made your position very clear. Now I'm making mine clear. Goodbye." I hung up and blocked his number too. The next few weeks became a blur of legal meetings, investment opportunities, and watching Marcus's carefully constructed world begin to crack. His calls to me stopped after the first week. His attorney started calling my attorney instead, and every conversation apparently ended with Marcus growing more panicked. "He's claiming he had no idea you had independent finances," Robert reported during one of our check-ins. "He's accusing you of hiding assets." "I didn't hide anything," I said truthfully. "I just never told him. There's a difference. His attorney is trying to argue that your investments should be considered community property. They won't win. My grandmother's will is ironclad, and every investment I made came from that inheritance. We have documentation proving the entire money trail. They're getting desperate," Robert observed. Marcus apparently had to take out a loan to pay his attorney's retainer. That surprised me. A loan? Why? His development company is in trouble. Has been for 2 years. He's been using personal credit cards to float business expenses. He's maxed out everywhere. I thought about the man who'd stood on that stage and mocked my ability to survive without his credit card. The irony was delicious. "There's something else," Robert said carefully. "He's been telling people you had an affair. That's why he made those comments. He was hurt and lashing out." "I've never been unfaithful," I said flatly. "In 12 years, I never even looked at another man." "I know." His attorney admitted privately they have no evidence because there is no evidence. "It's a desperation move. They're trying to paint you as the villain to justify his behavior. Let them try, I said. Discovery is going to be very educational for everyone involved. Discovery was indeed educational. My attorneys requested all of Marcus's financial records for the past 5 years. What we found was illuminating and pathetic in equal measure. His development company wasn't just struggling, it was functionally bankrupt. He'd been using new investor money to pay old investors, a classic Ponzi scheme pattern. His last 3 projects had failed to break even. He owed contractors. He owed suppliers. He owed the IRS. How did I not know this? I asked Robert, staring at the financial devastation. He kept the business accounts completely separate. You were focused on your own investments and assumed he was handling his business. He was careful to maintain appearances. The expensive dinners, the car, the club memberships, all of that was being funded by business credit, not actual profits. Marcus Ashford, the successful real estate developer, philanthropist of the year, was broke. Worse than broke. He was in debt to the tune of $3.7 million. The donations, I said suddenly. The foundation. That $500,000 he was honored for. Robert nodded grimly. Pledged but not paid. He announced the donation to get the award and the social status, but he never actually funded it. The foundation has been sending increasingly urgent letters. The man who'd called me decorative and useless was a fraud. And now, without me quietly supporting his lifestyle, his house of cards was collapsing. What happens next? I asked. His attorney is going to try to claim he's entitled to part of your assets to help him through this difficult time. I laughed. Actually laughed. He humiliated me publicly, called me worthless, implied I was a gold digger, and now he wants my money? That's exactly what they're going to argue. Over my dead body. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for 2 months after I'd walked out of the Windsor Club. In those 2 months, my life had transformed completely. I'd purchased 3 more properties, invested in 2 additional startups, and started consulting with other women about financial independence. Word had spread through whisper networks, and suddenly I was getting calls from wives all over Los Angeles who wanted to know how I'd done it. I started hosting quiet dinners at my new penthouse apartment overlooking the Pacific. Not charity events or social climbing, but real conversations with women who were tired of being decorative. We talked about investments, about protecting yourself financially, about building independence while maintaining the appearance of the dutiful wife. You're becoming dangerous, Diane noted during one of our meetings. You're teaching women to think for themselves. Good, I replied. We should have been doing this all along. Marcus's life, meanwhile, was falling apart spectacularly and publicly. The news about his company's financial troubles leaked. Investors started demanding their money back. The foundation rescinded his award and publicly demanded the promised donation. His face was everywhere, but now instead of the respected philanthropist, he was the con artist who'd built his reputation on pledges he couldn't honor. His friends distanced themselves rapidly. William stopped returning his calls. The country club suggested he might want to resign his membership before they revoked it. Even his parents, who'd initially been supportive, went quiet after they saw the financial records. Before the hearing, Marcus's attorney requested a private meeting. Robert advised against it, but I was curious about what last-ditch effort they were mounting. We met in a neutral office, Marcus and his attorney on one side of the table, Robert and me on the other. It was the first time I'd seen my husband in 2 months. He looked terrible, 20 pounds lighter, hair starting to gray, eyes shadowed with sleepless nights. "Victoria," he started, his voice raw. "Please, we can fix this." "We're here to discuss settlement terms," his attorney interjected quickly. "My client is willing to forfeit any claim to your separate property in exchange for your agreement to assume half of the community debt." I stared at them. "You want me to take on half of Marcus's business debts?" "They were incurred during the marriage," the attorney argued. "Technically, they're community obligations. They're from a business I had nothing to do with," I countered. "A business I wasn't even allowed to discuss at dinner parties because Marcus said I wouldn't understand." "Victoria, please." Marcus leaned forward. "I'm sorry about the speech. I'm sorry about everything. I was stressed and I took it out on you and it was wrong. But you're my wife. We're supposed to support each other. I supported you for 12 years, I said quietly. I managed your home, planned your events, maintained your image, and quietly paid for half your lifestyle when your business started failing. I supported you every single day. And in return, you stood on a stage and told everyone I was worthless. It was one mistake, No, I said. It was one public mistake. It was the culmination of 12 years of you making me feel small. Every time you dismissed my opinions. Every time you talked over me at dinner parties. Every time you introduced me as just my wife instead of by my name. That speech wasn't an aberration, Marcus. It was you finally saying out loud what you'd been thinking all along. That's not fair. You know what's not fair? My voice rose slightly. I could have destroyed you years ago. When I found out about your company's problems, I could have filed for divorce then and walked away clean. But I didn't because I thought we were partners. I thought marriage meant supporting each other through hard times. So I quietly covered our personal expenses and let you maintain your pride and never said a word. And you thanked me by calling me decorative. Marcus had gone pale. You knew? About the company? I've known for 3 years. I know about the bad investments, the unpaid contractors, the IRS debt, all of it. I knew. And I stayed silent because I loved you enough to let you fail in private rather than public. Then help me now, he pleaded. If you love me at all, help me get through this. I looked at the man I'd spent 12 years with, the man who'd once made me laugh, who'd once seemed kind, who'd somehow transformed into someone who could humiliate me for entertainment. I don't love you anymore, I said simply. I stopped loving you the moment you got applause for calling me worthless. So no, Marcus, I won't help you. You're going to have to save yourself this time. His attorney tried to argue further, but Robert shut it down. My client is not assuming any business debts. The separate property remains separate. We're prepared to go to court if necessary. We left them sitting at that conference table. In the parking lot, Robert turned to me with something like pride in her eyes. That was a masterclass in standing your ground. I should have done it years ago, I replied. The court hearing was surprisingly brief. The judge reviewed the financial documents, noted the clear separation between my inherited assets and Marcus's business debts, and ruled in my favor on every major point. Marcus retained his failing business and all associated debts. I retained my investments, my properties, and my freedom. The house was the only community asset of real value. The judge ordered it sold with proceeds split 50-50. Given that I'd been paying half the mortgage anyway, this was more than fair. Mr. Ashford, the judge said in conclusion, your attorney's argument that your wife should support you through your business difficulties is noted and rejected. Marriage is not a blank check for financial irresponsibility. The pattern of Ms. Morrison covering household expenses while you depleted business resources demonstrates remarkable patience on her part, not obligation for continued support. We walked out of the courthouse to a small crowd of reporters. The story had become too good to ignore. Wealthy philanthropist exposed as fraud. Humiliates wife who turns out to be secretly wealthy. Wife leaves him to rebuild alone. Ms. Morrison, what would you say to your ex-husband now? A reporter called out. I paused at my car, considering, then smiled. I'd say thank you. He gave me the motivation to stop hiding my light to make him comfortable. Sometimes the worst thing someone does to you is actually the best thing that could have happened. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Diane called me with interesting news. Remember the property development deal Marcus's company defaulted on? The one with the 23 acres in Malibu? Vaguely. It's going to foreclosure auction next week. Prime ocean view land, Victoria. Exactly the kind of thing you've been looking for to develop luxury eco-conscious housing. What's the estimated price? 4 to 5 million. But here's the interesting part. If you bought it, you'd essentially be acquiring the asset that bankrupted Marcus's company. I thought about that. The poetic justice of it. The land he couldn't develop. The project that had broken him financially, becoming the foundation of my next venture. Make the arrangements, I said. I want that property. The auction was held on a Wednesday morning. Only 3 serious bidders showed up. Me, a developer from San Diego, and an investment consortium from Dubai. We went back and forth, driving the price up incrementally. At $7 million, the San Diego developer dropped out. At $9 million, I had a decision to make. This was more than the land was worth in its current state, but I could see what it could become. Sustainable luxury homes, solar-powered, using reclaimed materials, marketed to wealthy, environmentally conscious buyers. A development that would make headlines and establish me as a serious force in California real estate. $10 million, I bid. The Dubai consortium hesitated, then shook their heads. They were buying on pure investment metrics. I was buying vision. Sold to bidder number 7 for $10 million. I'd just purchased Marcus's failure and would transform it into my triumph. The news spread quickly through Los Angeles social circles. Victoria Morrison, Marcus Ashford's supposedly worthless ex-wife, had just bought the property that destroyed his company and planned to develop it successfully. Marcus called that night. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. How could you? His voice was barely controlled rage. That land was mine. That project was my vision. It was your failure, I corrected. You couldn't execute. You didn't have the capital, or the connections, or frankly the creativity to make it work. So it went to foreclosure, and I bought it legally at public auction. You did this to hurt me. Marcus, I did this because it's a good investment. You're not important enough to factor into my business decisions anymore. You're just not that relevant to my life. The silence on the other end was absolute. I'd finally said what he'd said to me that night at the Windsor Club, that he didn't matter, that he was irrelevant, decorative at best. I'm going to make that project everything you couldn't, I said. It's going to be profitable, sustainable, and beautiful. Everything you claim to value but never actually achieved. And every time someone drives past it, they'll know it was built on the ruins of your failure. I hung up before he could respond. It felt good, better than good. It felt like the final door closing on a chapter of my life that should have ended years ago. 6 months later, I stood on that Malibu property with my development team. We'd hired an award-winning architect who specialized in sustainable design. We'd secured financing from 3 different socially responsible investment firms. We'd pre-sold 5 of the 12 planned homes to buyers who'd seen the concept drawings and immediately wanted in. This is going to be spectacular, my project manager said, looking at the ocean view. I heard this property bankrupted the last developer who tried to build here. It did, I said, but he was trying to build McMansions for pure profit. We're building something with actual vision. That makes all the difference. The project was scheduled to break ground in 3 weeks. The marketing campaign was already generating buzz. Architectural Digest wanted to do a feature. Dwell magazine requested an interview. The Los Angeles Times was planning a profile piece about my transformation from invisible wife to serious developer. How did you learn to do all this? My architect asked. The financial structuring, the sustainable design choices, the market positioning. This is graduate-level real estate development. I had 12 years with nothing to do but be decorative, I replied. So I spent that time learning everything I could about everything that interested me. Turns out being underestimated gives you a lot of freedom to educate yourself. 1 year after I'd walked out of the Windsor Club, I received an interesting invitation. The Harrison Foundation, the same organization that had originally honored Marcus, wanted to award me their Visionary Philanthropist Prize. Given your work mentoring women in financial independence and your commitment to sustainable development, we feel you embody the spirit of this award, the director explained over lunch. Unlike our previous recipient who made empty promises, you're actually changing lives. The shade was delicious and completely intentional. I'll accept, I said. On one condition. I want to host the gala at the Windsor Club. We usually rotate locations, but given the history, I think that's extremely appropriate. The night of the gala, I wore red. Not emerald like the night Marcus had humiliated me. Red, bold, and unapologetic. My dress was Ely Saab, custom-made, costing more than Marcus currently made in 6 months. The same ballroom, the same marble pillars, even the same champagne. But everything else was different. I was different. 300 people attended, 50% more than the previous year. My story had generated interest, and people wanted to see what I'd do with this platform. The women I'd been mentoring were scattered throughout the room. Some had started their own businesses. Others had left bad marriages. All of them were building lives on their own terms. Jennifer Morrison, who'd looked away in embarrassment last year, was sitting at my table as a guest of honor. She'd finally left her dismissive husband and was now running a successful consulting firm. I think about that night all the time, she admitted as we waited for dinner to be served. Watching you walk away. I went home and opened my own bank account the next day. It took me 8 more months to actually leave, but that night was when I started. You did the hard part, I told her, deciding you deserved better. Marcus was not invited. Technically, as the previous year's honoree, he should have been there to pass the torch symbolically. But the foundation had quietly dropped him from their records, refunded his membership fees, and removed his name from their donor wall. When my turn came to give a speech, I walked to the same stage, stood at the same microphone, and looked out at 300 faces waiting to hear what I would say. "Last year," I began, "I stood in this room as an invisible woman. I was someone's wife, someone's accessory, someone's joke. Tonight I stand here as myself. And I want to talk about what happens when we mistake invisibility for insignificance." The room was absolutely silent. The women I mentor often tell me they wish they'd started earlier. They wish they'd been brave sooner. They wish they'd known their worth before spending years proving it to people who would never see it. And I tell them what I wish someone had told me. You've always had the power. You were just taught to apologize for it. I saw nodding heads throughout the audience. Both men and women, I noticed. This message wasn't just for the invisible wives. It was for anyone who'd been made to feel small. The Harrison Foundation is honoring me for financial literacy programs and sustainable development. But the real work isn't teaching women how to invest. It's teaching them that they're worth investing in, that their dreams matter, that taking up space is not selfish. It's necessary. More nodding. Some women were crying. Someone once told me I was decorative, that I couldn't survive without them. And you know what? They were right. I couldn't survive as that small, silent version of myself. So I didn't. I became something bigger, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. To prove that the voice inside telling me I was capable was louder and more accurate than any voice trying to diminish me. The applause started building. So this award isn't really for me. It's for every woman who's been called too much or not enough, too ambitious or too quiet, too focused on money or too irresponsible. This is for everyone who's been told to shrink themselves to make someone else comfortable. The answer is no. Stay big. Take up space. Thrive so loudly they can't ignore you. The standing ovation was instantaneous and thunderous. 300 people on their feet, applauding not just me, but the version of themselves they'd been too afraid to become. After the speeches, after the awards, after the photos and interviews, I slipped out onto the same patio where I'd stood last year, watching Marcus mock me through glass doors. The night air was cool, the ocean breeze carrying salt and possibilities. "Quite a night," a voice said behind me. I turned to find Nathan Hendricks, Robert's colleague and fellow attorney. He'd been instrumental in my divorce case. "Quite a year," I corrected. "Marcus was arrested this morning," Nathan said quietly. "Wire fraud. The DA's been building a case around his business practices. He'll probably take a plea deal, but he's looking at federal prison time." I should have felt something. Satisfaction, maybe. Victory. But all I felt was tired. "I didn't want to destroy him," I said. "I just wanted to be free." "You didn't destroy him, Victoria. He destroyed himself. You just stopped propping him up." That was true. Every time I'd covered a mortgage payment, every time I'd paid for his lifestyle while his business crumbled, every time I'd stayed silent about his failures, I'd been enabling him. I'd been protecting him from consequences. Leaving had simply removed that protection and let reality catch up. "What will you do next?" Nathan asked. I looked out at the lights of Los Angeles stretching toward the horizon. Somewhere in that vast city were women attending dinner parties where they felt invisible, going home to people who diminished them, believing they had no options because they'd never seen another way. "I'm going to build something," I said. "Not just developments and investments. Something bigger. A foundation maybe. A network. A way for women to find each other before they reach their breaking point, so they don't have to wait until someone calls them worthless to realize their worth." That sounds ambitious. "Good," I smiled. "I'm done thinking small." 18 months after walking away from Marcus, I hosted the first annual Empowerment Summit at the new conference center my foundation had funded. 500 women attended. Entrepreneurs, investors, divorcees, single mothers, women escaping abuse, women building empires, women just starting to imagine they could. The keynote speaker was supposed to be a famous CEO, but at the last minute, I changed the program. "I want you to meet someone," I said from the stage. "Someone who represents why we're all here. Her name is Sarah Chen. 5 years ago, her husband told her she was worthless, that she contributed nothing, that she should be grateful he supported her. Sarah believed him because she'd been taught to believe him." A small Asian woman walked onto the stage, nervous but determined. What Sarah's husband didn't know, I continued, was that she'd been secretly learning web design. building skills, creating a portfolio. And one day, she left. She filed for divorce, moved into a studio apartment, and started freelancing. Today, 3 years later, Sarah runs a web development agency with 12 employees and 7-figure annual revenue. The applause was deafening. "Sarah isn't special," I said as it died down. "I'm not special. We're not extraordinary women who did impossible things. We're ordinary women who were given permission to believe we could do hard things, and then we did them." Story after story, woman after woman. Each one standing up and sharing their journey from invisible to unstoppable. The energy in that room was electric, possibilities crackling in the air like lightning. This was what Marcus had been afraid of all along, I realized. Not that I would leave him, but that I would discover I didn't need him, that I was more powerful alone than I'd ever been beside him. During the networking break, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25, wearing a department store dress and carrying a notebook filled with frantic notes. "Ms. Morrison, I need help. My boyfriend, he's always telling me I'm not smart enough to understand business. But I have ideas, really good ideas. I just don't know how to start." I looked at her eager face, at the dream she was afraid to speak out loud, at the potential being crushed by someone who should have been supporting her. "What's your name?" "Melissa." "Okay, Melissa. First lesson, stop calling them ideas. Call them plans. Ideas are dreams. Plans are roadmaps. Second lesson, stop seeking permission to be smart. You already are. You just need to start acting like you know it. Third lesson, get away from anyone who makes you doubt yourself. Life's too short to spend it proving your worth to people who are threatened by it." She was writing furiously in her notebook. Do you ever take on mentees?" I handed her my card. "I run a 12-week intensive program. It's competitive to get in, but I review all applications personally. Show me you're serious, and we'll talk." Melissa clutched the card like it was made of gold. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means." But I did know. I remembered being her, being hungry for permission to be more, waiting for someone to tell me I was capable, believing I needed validation before I could begin. That night, after the summit ended and the crowds dispersed, I sat in my office reviewing applications for next quarter's mentorship program. 43 women, all with stories that echoed my own. Husbands who dismissed them, families who doubted them, voices inside saying they could do more if only given the chance. I could take 12, maybe 15 if I stretched the resources. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Victoria? It's Marcus." I should have hung up immediately, but something in his voice stopped me. Defeat, complete and total. "I'm calling to say goodbye," he continued. "I'm going away for 5 years. Minimum. Maybe 8 with good behavior. My attorney says the case is airtight." I heard. "I want you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. The speech, the mockery, treating you like you didn't matter. I was threatened by you, and instead of being proud, I tried to make you small. That was wrong." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. "You weren't threatened by me, Marcus. You were threatened by your own inadequacy. I was just an easy target. Maybe. Probably. I'm going to have 5 years to think about it." He paused. "The Malibu development. I saw the renderings. It's beautiful. Everything I wanted to build but couldn't." "It's everything I wanted to build," I corrected. "Your vision was generic luxury. Mine is creating homes that actually improve the world they exist in. That's the difference between us. You wanted success as status. I wanted success as impact. I know. I see that now. Good luck, Marcus. I hope prison gives you the clarity you never found while you were free." I hung up. It was the last time we would ever speak. 2 years after that night at the Windsor Club, the Malibu development was complete. 12 homes, all occupied by buyers who valued sustainability over status. The project won architectural awards, environmental commendations, and established my company as a leader in responsible luxury development. The empty lot where Marcus had failed became a blueprint for my success, and every time someone asked me how I did it, I told them the truth. I was underestimated, and I used that invisibility to build an empire brick by brick while everyone was looking the other way. My foundation now supports 200 women annually, financial literacy courses, business mentorship, legal assistance for divorcees, childcare stipends for single mothers starting businesses. We've helped launch 73 successful companies and supported 84 women through divorce proceedings. But the number I'm proudest of is smaller and more personal. 12 women from my first mentorship cohort. All of them now successful in their own right. All of them now mentoring others. Creating a ripple effect of empowerment that extends far beyond anything I could do alone. Jennifer Morrison runs our legal assistance program. Sarah Chen handles our web presence. Melissa, the young woman from the summit, is now my project manager on the second Malibu development. We're building an ecosystem, not just of successful women, but of women who remember what it felt like to be invisible and are determined to make sure others don't stay that way. Last month, I received an invitation to give the commencement address at UCLA's business school. Me, the woman who'd been called decorative and worthless, asked to inspire the next generation of business leaders. I accepted immediately. Standing at that podium, looking at 600 graduates about to enter the world, I told them the truth. Some of you will be underestimated, your ideas dismissed, your worth questioned, your potential ignored. And when that happens, you have a choice. You can shrink to fit their limited vision of you, or you can build something so undeniable they can't look away. 600 faces, hanging on every word. I chose to build, and that choice, made in the darkness of humiliation and doubt, led me here, to this moment, to this life, to this version of myself who is more powerful than I ever imagined possible. The applause was thunderous, but more importantly, I saw recognition in their eyes, the women especially. They knew this story. They'd lived versions of it, and now they were seeing proof that survival was possible, that thriving was achievable, that revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about construction, building something so magnificent that it proved all the doubters wrong without you ever having to say a word. After the ceremony, a line of students waited to speak with me. One young woman, tears streaming down her face, handed me a note. I read it later, in my car, before driving back to my office. My father told me women can't run companies, that we're too emotional, too soft, too whatever. I've spent 4 years in business school doubting whether I belong here. Then I heard your speech. Thank you for showing me that surviving someone else's cruelty and thriving despite it aren't mutually exclusive. I'm going to build something, and when my father sees it, he'll know he was wrong. I folded the note carefully and put it in my portfolio, next to 37 others just like it. Proof that invisibility, when weaponized properly, becomes the ultimate superpower. Marcus served 4 years of his sentence and was released early for good behavior. I learned this not from him, but from a brief mention in the business section of the Los Angeles Times. Former developer released, attempting to rebuild life after fraud conviction. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just the quiet acknowledgement that his story and mine had diverged completely, and wherever his path led next, it would be far from mine. My story continued. New developments, new mentees, new women discovering their power. An empire built not on revenge, but on the refusal to stay small. And sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment on the stage at the Windsor Club. The moment Marcus called me decorative and worthless. The moment everything changed. I think about the woman I was then, frozen with humiliation, believing perhaps he was right. And I smile at the woman I am now, who knows with absolute certainty he was catastrophically wrong. If Victoria's journey from humiliation to empire inspired you, hit that like button right now. My favorite moment was when she bought the Malibu property that bankrupted Marcus and turned it into her triumph. Pure poetic justice. What was your favorite scene? Tell me in the comments below. And don't miss more stories of resilience, revenge, and remarkable transformations. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.